I'm Nathan Bell, and I fix things for a living. Computers, mostly. Sometimes people's networks, sometimes their printers, occasionally their complete inability to understand that turning something off and on again actually works. I'm 42, married 19 years, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. That was before I heard my wife laughing. Not just any laugh, the kind of laugh that cuts through kitchen walls and finds you in the garage, where you're supposedly fixing the lawnmower, but really just trying to avoid another evening of cold shoulders and one-word answers. Honestly, I control him with just one simple thing. Julia's voice, clear as day, followed by the cackles of her 3 best friends. Monique, Beth, and Addie. The unholy trinity of suburban judgment who descended on our house every Friday night like locusts in yoga pants. I froze with a wrench in my hand, oil stains on my fingers, and something cold spreading through my chest. "Girl, you are terrible," Monique's voice drifted through the wall. "But seriously, how do you do it?" "It's so easy, it's almost sad," Julia said. "Men are simple, they want one thing, and if you control that one thing, you control everything. When he starts getting uppity or thinks he has opinions about how I spend money or where I go, I just cut him off. Works every single time." The laughter that followed was the sound of women who thought they'd cracked some universal code, like they were sharing the secret to domesticating wild animals. "Oh my God, yes," Beth chimed in. "I do the same thing with Richard. 2 weeks without, and suddenly he's Mr. Agreeable about everything." "The best part," Julia continued, "is they never figure it out. They think it's their fault. Nathan will literally apologize for things he didn't even do, just hoping I'll stop being tired all the time." More laughter, louder this time. I set the wrench down very carefully because my hands had started shaking. Not with anger, not yet. With something worse. Recognition. She was right. For months now, maybe longer, I'd been walking on eggshells. Apologizing for leaving dishes in the sink. Apologizing for working late. Apologizing for wanting to watch a game instead of another episode of whatever reality show she was obsessed with this week. And yes, I'd noticed the sudden headaches, the exhaustion, the way she'd turn away from me in bed like I was radioactive. I'd thought it was stress. Her job at the advertising firm had been demanding lately. Or maybe it was my job. IT support doesn't exactly scream romance. I'd even wondered if it was my fault, if I'd become boring, predictable, the kind of husband who gets taken for granted. But it wasn't any of those things. It was deliberate. The trick, Julia was saying, is to make it seem natural, like you're not in the mood, not that you're punishing them. They have to think it's their job to win you back. "You are diabolical," Addie said with obvious admiration. "I need to try this with Kevin. He's been way too comfortable lately." I stood there in my garage, surrounded by tools and motor oil and the accumulated debris of 19 years of marriage, and felt something shift inside me. Like a gear clicking into place. I didn't storm into the kitchen, I didn't slam doors or demand explanations. Instead, I finished what I was doing, cleaned my hands, and went upstairs to take a shower. In the mirror afterward, I looked the same. Brown hair going gray at the temples, lines around my eyes from squinting at computer screens, the soft middle that comes from too many years behind a desk. But something had changed. Something fundamental. Julia was still downstairs with her friends when I came back down. They'd moved from the kitchen to the living room, wine glasses in hand, voices slightly louder with alcohol and shared conspiracy. "Oh, there he is," Julia said as I passed through. Her voice had that artificial sweetness she used when she was performing for an audience. "How's the mower, honey?" "Fixed," I said simply. "Aren't you going to say hi to the girls?" I looked at them. Monique, divorced twice and working on a 3rd marriage. Beth, whose husband Richard looked like a beaten dog every time I saw him. Addie, who'd spent the last 5 years complaining about Kevin while systematically destroying his confidence. "Hi," I said, and then I went upstairs to bed. I heard Julia follow about an hour later after her friends had left. She slipped into bed beside me and I felt her testing the waters, the way she always did when she was ready to grant me a reprieve from whatever crime I'd supposedly committed. Her hand found my shoulder. "Nathan, you okay? You seemed quiet tonight." This was the moment. The script called for me to apologize, to ask what was wrong, to work my way back into her good graces through some combination of groveling and promises to do better. Instead, I said, "I'm fine. Good night, Julia." And I rolled over. I felt her confusion in the dark, the way she went still beside me. This wasn't how it usually went. Usually, I'd take the bait, start the long process of figuring out what I'd done wrong and how I could make it right. But not tonight. Tonight, I'd learned something important. Julia thought she controlled me with love, thought she could manipulate my behavior by withholding intimacy, by making me jump through hoops for basic affection. She was about to find out how wrong she was. The next morning started like any other Saturday. Julia made coffee, I read the news on my tablet, and we moved around each other in the kitchen with the practiced efficiency of two people who'd been married long enough to know each other's routines. But I was watching her now. Really watching. I saw the way she glanced at me when she thought I wasn't looking, trying to gauge my mood. The way she waited for me to make the first move toward conversation, toward connection, toward the normal pattern of weekend interaction. I didn't. "So," she said finally, settling at the table with her coffee, "what do you want to do today?" "I've got some work to catch up on," I said without looking up from my tablet. "Server maintenance for the Morrison account." "On Saturday?" I shrugged. "Easier to do it when their office is closed. Less disruption." This was true, but normally I'd have asked if she minded or suggested we do something together afterward. The old Nathan would have been looking for ways to earn his way back into her good graces. The new Nathan just finished his coffee and went to his home office. I actually did have work to do, which made it easier. But even as I was updating security patches and running diagnostics, part of my mind was analyzing the situation like a system problem. Julia's control method relied on me wanting something from her. Specifically, it relied on me wanting it enough to modify my behavior to get it. But what happened when I stopped wanting it? Or more accurately, what happened when I stopped being willing to pay her price for it? My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Paul, who worked in the cubicle next to mine at Meridian Tech. "Beer later, Sarah's got book club. Can't. Working." "On Saturday? What did you do wrong now?" I stared at the text for a long moment. Even Paul assumed I was in the doghouse for something. When had that become the default assumption about my marriage? Nothing. Just busy. Right. Well, if you need to escape the Ice Queen, let me know. Paul had never liked Julia, though he was usually more diplomatic about it. The fact that he was calling her the Ice Queen via text meant he'd probably had a few beers already, despite it being barely noon. I went back to work, but his words stuck with me. Ice Queen. Was that how other people saw my wife? And if so, what did that make me? Around 3, Julia appeared in my office doorway. She'd changed into yoga pants and a fitted top, the kind of outfit that usually preceded an afternoon of errands or cleaning, activities that she'd traditionally use to demonstrate how busy and important she was. "I'm going to Target," she said. "Need anything?" "I'm good." She lingered in the doorway. "You've been in here all day." "Lot to catch up on." "Nathan," her voice had that edge it got when she was starting to get annoyed. "Are you mad about something?" I looked up from my screen, met her eyes directly. "Should I be?" It was a perfect reversal. Instead of me asking what I'd done wrong, I was asking what she'd done wrong. The confusion that flashed across her face was almost comical. No, I just thought maybe what? Nothing." She turned to go, then stopped. "We should do something tonight. Maybe watch a movie." This was an olive branch. Julia suggesting we spend time together was rare enough to be noteworthy. The old Nathan would have jumped at it, grateful for the opportunity to reconnect. "Maybe," I said. "Depends on how much work I get done." She left without another word, and I heard her car pull out of the driveway 20 minutes later. I wasn't actually that busy. I could have finished everything in another hour. But I stayed in my office until dinner time, emerging only to make myself a sandwich and grab a beer from the fridge. Julia came back around 5 with shopping bags and an expression I couldn't quite read. She made dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy, and we ate in relative silence. "How was Target?" I asked, because completely ignoring her would have been too obvious. "Fine, crowded." She pushed pasta around on her plate. "I got those towels we needed for the guest bathroom." "Good." More silence. Julia kept glancing at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. After dinner, she suggested the movie again. I agreed, but spent most of it on my laptop, supposedly answering work emails, but actually reading articles about emotional manipulation in relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me. When we went to bed, Julia tried again. The hand on my shoulder, the shift toward my side of the bed, the subtle signals that had always preceded her granting me access to intimacy. "Nathan?" Are we okay? Why wouldn't we be? Her hand moved to my chest. I don't know. You've just seemed distant today. This was the moment, the test. In the old dynamic, this would have been my cue to reassure her, to pursue her, to work my way back into her good graces through attention and affection. Instead, I gently moved her hand back to her side of the bed. I'm just tired, I said. Long day. The silence that followed was deafening. Sunday morning brought the first real crack in Julia's composure. I woke up early, made coffee for myself, and was already dressed and reading the paper when she came downstairs in her robe, hair messy, looking like she hadn't slept well. You didn't make me coffee, she said. It wasn't a question or a request. It was an accusation. For 19 years, I'd made coffee for both of us every morning. It was one of those small rituals that married couples develop, supposedly a sign of consideration and care. You were still sleeping, I said without looking up from the sports section. Didn't want to wake you? You could have left it in the pot. I only made 1 cup. She stared at me for a moment, then went to make her own coffee. I could feel her confusion radiating across the kitchen like heat from an oven. My phone rang. Paul, probably calling to check if I'd survived whatever marital crisis he'd assumed I was having. Hey, I answered. Morning, sunshine. How's the doghouse? I'm not in the doghouse. Right. That's why you were working on Saturday instead of doing whatever it is married people do on weekends. Julia was listening. I could tell by the way she'd gone still at the coffee maker, even though she was pretending to focus on adding cream to her mug. Actually, I said, I'm thinking about getting out more. Maybe we should start up those poker nights again. Paul and I used to host a monthly poker game with guys from work and the neighborhood. Julia had gradually ended it over the years through a combination of scheduling conflicts, complaints about noise, and general disapproval. I'd eventually given up trying to organize it. Seriously? Paul sounded surprised. What about the missus? What about her? I just figured, the usual objections. I'm a grown man, Paul. I can play cards with my friends if I want to. There was a pause. Okay, yeah, let's do it. This Friday work? Perfect. I hung up and went back to my paper. Julia was still standing by the coffee maker and mug in hand staring at me. Poker night? She said. Yeah, it's been too long. I thought we agreed those were too much trouble. You agreed that. I just stopped arguing about it. Another crack. This one visible in the way her mouth tightened. Nathan, what is going on with you? I folded the paper and looked at her directly. What do you mean? You're acting strange. Different. Different how? I don't know, just different. It was fascinating, watching her try to articulate what was happening without admitting what she'd been doing. She couldn't say I was being unresponsive to her manipulation without acknowledging that she'd been manipulating me. I feel fine, I said. Maybe you're just not used to me having opinions about things. She stopped, clearly frustrated. We should talk. About what? About us. About whatever's going on. I stood up, rinsed my coffee mug in the sink. I'm going to wash my car, then I thought I'd call my brother, see how he's doing. Another small rebellion. Julia had never liked my brother Mike. She thought he was a bad influence, too crude, too willing to speak his mind about things she preferred to keep buried. I'd gradually stopped calling him as much, stopped suggesting we visit. Another small accommodation in the long list of accommodations that had defined our marriage. You never call Mike, Julia said. I used to call Mike all the time before. Before what? I looked at her for a moment. This woman I'd been married to for 19 years, who thought she could control my behavior like training a dog. Before I stopped doing things you didn't like, I said, and then I went outside to wash my car. Through the kitchen window, I could see Julia standing exactly where I'd left her, coffee mug in hand, staring at nothing. Mike answered on the 3rd ring. Well, look at that, Nathan Bell. What's the occasion? Somebody die? Can a man call his brother? A man can. You, on the other hand, haven't called me in 6 months. Let me guess. Julia's not home. Actually, she is home. Oh, well then someone definitely died. I laughed and realized how long it had been since I'd laughed at anything. No one died, Mike. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Bees, but I'll play along. I'm good. Business is good. Jenny's good. Kids are expensive and loud. The usual. What's really going on? Mike owned a small construction company and had been married to Jenny for 15 years. They had the kind of marriage where they actually seemed to like each other, where they laughed at each other's jokes and didn't keep score of every small slight. Nothing's going on. Can't I just call my brother? You can, but you don't. Not since you married the Ice Princess. There was that phrase again, Ice Princess. Even Mike, who saw Julia maybe 3 times a year, had noticed. She's not that bad, I said, but the words felt automatic, reflexive. Right. That's why you sound like a hostage every time I talk to you. Through the window, I could see Julia pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling one of her friends to complain about my strange behavior. Mike, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think I paused, trying to find the right words. Do you think I've changed since I got married? Changed how? I don't know. Become more passive, I guess? Mike was quiet for a moment. You want the truth? Yeah. You used to have opinions about everything, sports, politics, where to go for dinner, what movie to watch. You'd argue with me about stupid crap just for the fun of it. Now when I see you, it's like you're waiting for permission to exist. The words hit harder than I'd expected. But that's marriage, right? I said. Compromise. There's compromise, and then there's whatever the heck you've been doing. Jenny and I compromise. We negotiate. We disagree and work it out. You just disappear. I looked up at the kitchen window. Julia was still on the phone, gesturing emphatically. Yeah, I said quietly. I think I'm done disappearing. Monday morning brought the first real test of my newfound resolve. I woke up at my usual time, made coffee for myself, and was getting dressed when Julia emerged from the bathroom in her work clothes, a sharp black suit that cost more than I made in a week. You didn't make coffee, she said. Nope. Why not? I looked at her in the mirror as I knotted my tie. Because I'm not your servant. The words hung in the air like smoke. Julia's reflection went very still. Excuse me? You heard me? Nathan, what the heck has gotten into you? I turned to face her directly. Maybe I'm just tired of being taken for granted. Taken for granted? I don't take you for granted. Really? When's the last time you made me coffee? That's not the point. You've always made the coffee. 'Cause you expected me to. There's a difference. She stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. This is about coffee? No, Julia, this isn't about coffee. But I didn't explain what it was about. Let her figure it out. I finished getting dressed and went downstairs. Julia followed a few minutes later, moving around the kitchen with sharp, angry movements. She made her own coffee, grabbed a granola bar, and headed for the door. I'm working late tonight, she said. Don't wait up. In the old dynamic, this would have been a punishment. Julia withdrawing her presence, making me wonder what I'd done wrong, setting up a situation where I'd have to apologize and grovel to get back to normal. Okay, I said, I'll probably stay late too. Got a lot to catch up on. She paused in the doorway, clearly expecting me to ask why she was working late, or to protest, or to show some sign that her absence mattered to me. I went back to reading my tablet. Okay, she said finally, and left. At work, Paul noticed the change immediately. You look different, he said, settling into his cubicle with his morning coffee. Less beaten down? Thanks? I'm serious, you've got some color back. What happened? Julia finally give you permission to be human? I thought about how to answer that. I had an epiphany. About the difference between being married and being owned. Paul raised an eyebrow. Wow, that's either very healthy or very dangerous. Probably both. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. We need to talk when I get home. I showed it to Paul. Uh-oh, he said. You're in trouble. Am I? Aren't you? I thought about it. I don't think I care anymore. Paul stared at me. Holy crap. You're serious. Dead serious. What brought this on? I told him about Friday night, about overhearing Julia's conversation with her friends, about the casual way she'd discussed controlling me, like I was a pet that needed training. Paul listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as I talked. Jesus Christ, he said when I finished. That's pretty messed up, man. Yeah. So what are you going to do? I'm going to stop playing her game. And then what? I guess we'll find out. The day passed quickly. I actually got a lot done. Freed from the usual mental energy I spent worrying about whatever imaginary crisis was waiting for me at home. Around 5, my phone rang. Julia. Hi, I answered. Where are you? At work. Where else would I be? You said you were working late. I am working late. How late? I don't know until I'm done. There was a pause. Nathan, we really need to talk. About what? About what's been going on with you. Nothing's going on with me. You've been acting strange for days. Have I? Or have I just been acting like myself for the first time in years? Another pause, longer this time. Just come home, she said finally. Please. The please was interesting. Julia didn't usually say please. I'll be home when I'm done here. I hung up and went back to work. I didn't actually stay that late, and maybe an hour past normal. But when I got home, Julia was waiting in the living room like a lawyer preparing for cross-examination. Sit down, she said. I need to change first. Nathan, sit down. I looked at her for a moment, then walked upstairs to change clothes. When I came back down, she was still in the same spot, but her composure had cracked slightly. Are you having an affair? She asked. The question was so unexpected I almost laughed. No, Julia, I'm not having an affair. Then what's going on? Nothing's going on. Stop saying that. Something is obviously going on. You're acting completely different. I sat down across from her, studying her face. She looked genuinely distressed, but there was something else there too. Something that looked like fear. Different how? I asked. You know how. No, I don't. Tell me. She struggled for words. You're just not yourself. Who am I supposed to be? I don't know. The man I married. The man you married had opinions. He had friends. He made decisions without asking permission. Maybe I'm more like him than you remember. That's not... She stopped, clearly frustrated. This is about the coffee, isn't it? It's not about the coffee. Then what? I leaned back in my chair, considering how much to tell her, how much she was ready to hear. It's about respect, I said finally. Respect? I respect you. Do you? Of course I do. When's the last time you asked my opinion about something that mattered to you? I ask your opinion all the time. About what color to paint the bathroom, about which restaurant to go to, about things that don't matter. When's the last time you asked what I thought about something important? She opened her mouth, then closed it. When's the last time you changed your mind about something because of something I said? Silence. When's the last time you seemed happy to see me when I came home from work? Nathan, when's the last time you initiated a conversation about something other than household logistics or your work drama? That's not fair, isn't it? She stood up, started pacing. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop treating me like an inconvenience you have to manage. I don't do that. Don't you? She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something raw in her expression. Something that might have been recognition. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Do what? This, marriage. I don't know how to be married to someone who... She trailed off. Who what? Who won't let me be in control? And there it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. Julia, I said gently, you were never supposed to be in control. We were supposed to be partners. She sat back down, looking suddenly very small. I don't know how to do that either, she said. The conversation that night was the first honest one Julia and I had had in years. Maybe ever. She cried. I hadn't seen her cry in so long I'd forgotten what it looked like. Not the angry tears she used as tools during arguments, but real tears. Vulnerable tears. I learned it from my mother, she said. The control thing. That's how she managed my father. That's how she managed everyone. Julia's mother was a piece of work. A cold, manipulative woman who treated every interaction like a chess game she intended to win. I'd never liked her, but I'd never connected the dots between her behavior and Julia's. She taught you that love was about power, I said. She taught me that if you don't have power, you get hurt. And you've been trying not to get hurt. Yes, but you've been hurting me instead. She nodded, not looking at me. I didn't mean to, she said. I didn't even realize I was doing it. It just felt normal. We talked until almost midnight, about her childhood, about the gradual way she'd taken control of our relationship, about my own role in enabling it, about the person I'd been when we met and the person I'd become. It felt like a beginning, like maybe we could find our way back to something real. I was wrong. The next few days were better. Julia made an effort to ask my opinions, to include me in decisions, to treat me like an equal partner instead of a subordinate. She even suggested we invite Paul and Sarah over for dinner, something she'd avoided for years. But it didn't last. By the following weekend, old patterns were reasserting themselves. The subtle criticisms, the expectation that I'd defer to her preferences, the gradual withdrawal of affection when I didn't comply with her unspoken demands. The difference was that now I could see it happening. And now I had a choice about how to respond. Friday night brought another gathering of the unholy trinity. Monique, Beth, and Addie descended on our house with wine and gossip, claiming the living room like occupying forces. I was in the garage again, actually working on the lawnmower this time, when their voices drifted through the wall. So how are things with Nathan? Monique asked. You said he was acting weird. Better, Julia said. We talked. I think it was just work stress. Men are so fragile, Beth said with a laugh. Richard gets all moody when he's feeling unappreciated. I have to remind him who's in charge. Exactly, Addie chimed in. Kevin tried to give me attitude about my shopping last week. 2 days of the silent treatment, and he was apologizing and offering to carry my bags. They laughed, the same laugh I'd heard 2 weeks ago. The key, Julia said, is not to let them think they have real power. You can let them win little battles, but you have to win the war. My hands went still on the wrench. What do you mean? Monique asked. Like with Nathan. I let him have his little rebellion, let him feel like he was making a point. But at the end of the day, he still needs me more than I need him. He'll fall back in line. That's brilliant, Beth said. Make them think they're getting what they want while you stay in control. Men are so predictable, Addie added. They want to feel important, but they don't actually want the responsibility of being in charge. They're happier when we make the decisions. More laughter. I set down the wrench and walked into the house. The conversation stopped when I appeared in the living room doorway. 4 faces turned toward me, wine glasses frozen halfway to lips. Ladies, I said pleasantly, having a nice evening? Nathan! Julia's voice was bright, artificial. We were just talking about work stuff. Were you? Sounded like you were talking about training husbands. The silence was deafening. I think I misheard, Monique said with a nervous laugh. Did you? Because it sounded like you were comparing your husbands to pets that need to be managed. Nathan, Julia said, warning in her voice. What? I looked at each of them in turn. Did I misunderstand something? Because from where I was standing, it sounded like you were bragging about manipulating the men in your lives. That's not, Beth started. That's not what, I interrupted, but that's not what you were doing. Because I'm pretty sure I heard Addie talking about giving Kevin the silent treatment until he apologized for having an opinion about your spending. Addie's face went red. That's between me and my husband. Is it? Because you seem pretty comfortable discussing it with your friends. Nathan, stop, Julia said, standing up. Stop what? Stop pointing out that you and your friends sit around comparing notes on how to emotionally manipulate your husbands. We don't, Monique began. You don't what? You don't withhold affection to control behavior? You don't use guilt and silent treatments to get your way? You don't laugh about how easy it is to make grown men jump through hoops? The room was dead silent now. Because that's what I heard, I continued. I heard 4 women talking about their husbands like they were badly trained dogs that needed better discipline. You're being ridiculous, Julia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Julia, didn't you just tell your friends that you let me have my little rebellion, but that I'd fall back in line? Her face went white. Didn't you just say that the key was not to let me think I have real power? I didn't. You didn't what? You didn't say those exact words? Because I was standing right there. Monique stood up abruptly. I think we should go. I think that's a good idea, I said. They gathered their things quickly, avoiding eye contact. Beth mumbled something about calling later. Addie didn't say anything at all. Julia walked them to the door, her movements stiff and mechanical. When she came back to the living room, I was sitting in my chair waiting. How much did you hear? She asked. Enough. It wasn't, we were just talking. You were just talking about how to manipulate me. That's not what it was. Then what was it? She sat down across from me, looking defeated. I don't know, she said quietly. Yes, you do. Nathan, you told them our conversation was meaningless. You told them I'd fall back in line. You told them you were still in control. I was embarrassed. They were asking questions about why you'd been acting different, and I didn't want to admit that our marriage was in trouble. So you lied. Yes. To them or to me? She looked up at me, confusion in her eyes. Did you lie to them about being in control? Or did you lie to me about wanting to change? The question hung between us like a blade. I don't know, she whispered, and that's when I knew it was over. I didn't make any dramatic announcements. I didn't storm out or demand immediate changes. Instead, I did something much more devastating. I stopped caring about Julia's approval entirely. Monday morning, I made coffee for myself and left the pot empty. When she complained, I shrugged and said she was capable of making her own. When she tried to start an argument about it, I simply left for work. Tuesday, I confirmed the poker game for Friday night. When Julia said it was inconvenient, I told her she was welcome to make other plans. Wednesday, I called Mike and invited him and Jenny for dinner on Sunday. When Julia protested that the house wasn't ready for company, I told her they were family, not judges from Better Homes and Gardens. Thursday, I stopped at the store and bought groceries for meals I wanted to eat, not the organic, expensive brands Julia preferred. When she complained about the cost savings, I pointed out that we'd have more money for things that mattered. Friday brought the poker game. Paul arrived first, followed by 3 other guys from work and 2 neighbors I'd reconnected with. We set up in the dining room, ordered pizza, and settled in for a night of cards and conversation. Julia emerged from upstairs around 8, dressed for a night out. "I'm going to Monique's," she announced. "Have fun," I said without looking up from my cards. She lingered in the doorway, clearly expecting me to ask questions or express concern about her plans. "Don't wait up," she added. "Wasn't planning to." She left with a sharp click of heels on hardwood. "Wow," Paul said after the door closed. "What happened to you?" "I grew a spine," I said, and won the next hand with a pair of 10s. The poker game was a revelation. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed the company of men who didn't require me to walk on eggshells. We talked about sports, work, politics, life. We laughed at crude jokes and argued about meaningless things. It felt like coming back to life. Julia came home around midnight, slightly drunk and clearly expecting to find me waiting with questions and accusations. Instead, she found me cleaning up empty beer bottles and counting my winnings. "How much did you lose?" she asked. "I won $63. "Oh." She seemed disappointed by this news. "How is Monique's?" "Fine." She waited for more questions. I didn't ask any. "I'm going to bed," she said finally. "Good night." Saturday morning brought a new development. Julia woke up early and made coffee for both of us, leaving my cup on the counter with a tentative smile. "Thank you," I said, genuinely appreciative of the gesture. "You're welcome." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, clearly wanting to talk. "The poker game sounded fun," she said. "It was." "How often are you planning to do it?" "Once a month, probably. Maybe twice, if the guys are interested." She nodded, processing this information. "Nathan, can we talk about us?" "What about us?" "About where we go from here." I set down my coffee and looked at her directly. "Where do you want to go?" "I want to fix this. I want to fix us." "Do you, or do you want to get back to a situation where you're comfortable?" "That's not fair, isn't it? Because from where I sit, you only want to work on our marriage when you're not getting what you want from it." She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. "That's not true. When's the last time you suggested we work on our relationship when things were going your way?" Silence. "When's the last time you apologized for anything without being caught first?" More silence. "Julia, I heard what you told your friends. You think this is a game? You can win by being patient and strategic. You think if you play your cards right, you can get me back under control. No, But here's the thing. I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm not interested in being managed or controlled or trained. I'm interested in being married to someone who sees me as an equal partner." "I do see you as an equal partner." "Do you? Because equal partners don't strategize about how to manipulate each other. Equal partners don't laugh with their friends about how easy it is to control their spouse's behavior." She started to cry, but they were the angry tears again, not the vulnerable ones. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "I want you to decide if you want to be married to me or if you want to be married to someone you can control, because those are 2 different things. I can't just change overnight. I'm not asking you to change overnight. I'm asking you to want to change, and I'm not sure you do." She stared at me for a long moment. "And if I don't, then we'll get divorced." The words came out calmly, matter-of-factly, without anger or drama. But they hit her like a physical blow. "You don't mean that." "I absolutely mean that. Nathan, we've been married 19 years. I know. We have a life together. We have a routine together. That's not the same thing." "I love you." "Do you, or do you love having me?" She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. "Think about it," I said gently. "Really think about it. Because I'm done living in a marriage where I'm treated like a well-trained pet. I'd rather be alone." I stood up, rinsed my coffee mug, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To pick up Mike and Jenny. They'll be here around 2. "Nathan, wait." I turned back to her. "I need time," she said. "You have time. Take all the time you need." "How much time?" "As much as it takes for you to decide what you really want. And what if I decide I want our marriage to work? Then we'll work on it, together, as equals. And if I can't do that, then we'll end it, as adults." I left her sitting at the kitchen table, staring into her coffee cup like it might contain answers. Mike and Jenny arrived right on time, bringing their kids and a casserole that smelled like heaven. We spent the afternoon in the backyard, grilling burgers and watching the kids play, while the adults talked about everything and nothing. Julia made an effort to be social, but I could see the strain in her smile. The way she kept glancing at me, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. After dinner, while Jenny helped with dishes and the kids played video games, Mike pulled me aside. "You look good," he said. "Thanks." "I mean it. You look like yourself again. I feel like myself again." "What changed?" I told him about the conversation I'd overheard, about the weeks since then, about the ultimatum I'd given Julia that morning. Mike listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. "Good for you," he said when I finished. "Yeah? Heck yes. You think Jenny would put up with me if I tried to control her? She'd kick my A to the curb so fast it would make my head spin. Some marriages work differently. Some marriages aren't really marriages. They're hostage situations with joint checking accounts." I laughed to spite myself. "So what's next?" he asked. "I guess we'll see what she decides. And if she decides she can't change, then I'll file for divorce. You ready for that?" I thought about it. "Yeah, I think I am." "Good, because you deserve better than what you've been settling for." That night, after Mike and Jenny left, Julia and I cleaned up in relative silence. When we were done, she turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I've been thinking about what you said this morning," she said. "And I think you're right about some of it." "Some of it? I think I've been trying to control you. I think I learned that from my mother, and I think I've been doing it without really understanding what I was doing. I waited for the but I don't think it's as simple as you're making it sound. Marriage is complicated. People have patterns. It's not easy to just change everything." "I'm not asking you to change everything. I'm asking you to change one thing." "What's that?" "Stop trying to win." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "Stop treating our marriage like a competition you need to win. Stop keeping score. Stop strategizing about how to get your way. Just be my wife." "I don't know how to do that." "Then learn. We can learn together. And if I can't, then we'll both find people who make us happier." She nodded slowly, processing this. "I need to think," she said. "Take your time." She went upstairs, and I stayed in the kitchen, finishing the dishes and thinking about the future. For the first time in years, it felt like I actually had one. Julia took 3 days to think. During those 3 days, she tried every manipulation tactic in her arsenal. She was cold and distant, hoping I'd chase her. When that didn't work, she was overly affectionate, trying to seduce me back into compliance. When that failed, she picked fights about trivial things, attempting to provoke me into the old patterns of apology and appeasement. I responded to all of it with calm detachment. I didn't chase, didn't react, didn't engage. I simply continued being the person I decided to become, a man who knew his own worth and wouldn't settle for less than he deserved. On Wednesday evening, she found me in the garage, actually working on the lawnmower this time instead of just hiding from her friends. "Nathan?" I looked up from the carburetor I was cleaning. "Yeah? Can we talk?" "Sure." She sat down on an overturned bucket, looking nervous. "I've been thinking about what you said, about our marriage, about the way I've been treating you." "Okay, I think you're right. I think I have been trying to control you. And I think I've been doing it because it felt safer than being vulnerable." I set down my tools and gave her my full attention. "Go on." "My parents' marriage was a war zone. My mother controlled my father through manipulation and guilt, and he controlled her through anger and intimidation. I swore I'd never be like her, but I think I just learned a different version of the same game." "What game is that?" "The game where someone has to be in charge, where someone has to win." I nodded. "And you decided it should be you." "Yes, because I thought if I wasn't in control, I'd get hurt." "But you hurt me instead." "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I hurt you instead." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that admission settling between us. "The thing is," she continued, "I don't know how to be married any other way. I don't know how to be vulnerable without feeling like I'm losing something." "Vulnerability isn't about losing," I said gently. "It's about trusting. I don't know how to trust." "Then that's what we work on." "We? If you want to, if you're willing to try something different." She looked at me with something that might have been hope. "What would that look like?" "I don't know. We'd have to figure it out together. But it would start with both of us agreeing that we're on the same team, instead of opposing teams." "Right. And no more manipulation, no more games. No more games." She was quiet for a long time, thinking. "What if I can't do it?" she asked finally. "What if I try and I just fall back into old patterns?" "Then we'll work on it. Together. But Julia, you have to actually want to change. You can't just want me to stop noticing the things you're doing. I know. Do you? Because wanting to change and wanting me to shut up about the problems are two different things. She flinched but nodded. I want to change, she said. I want to learn how to be married to you instead of trying to manage you. Okay, let's try. She smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Where do we start? We start with honesty, complete honesty. No more strategic conversations with your friends about how to handle me. No more pretending everything is fine when it's not. No more using love as a tool or a reward. God, I really did that, didn't I? Yeah, you did. I'm sorry. I know. How do we get past it? We start over. We figure out who we are now as people, and we see if those people want to be married to each other. And if they don't, then we end it with respect and kindness instead of resentment and manipulation. She nodded, understanding. Nathan? Yeah, thank you. For what? For not just leaving, for giving me a chance to figure this out. Julia, I didn't want our marriage to end. I just wanted it to actually be a marriage. I know, and I want that too. That night, we talked until almost dawn. Really talked, for the first time in years. About our childhoods, our fears, our hopes for the future. About the people we'd been when we met and the people we'd become. About the marriage we wanted to have and the work it would take to get there. It wasn't easy. There were tears, arguments, moments of frustration when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But there was also something new. A sense that we were finally being honest with each other. I need to tell you something, Julia said around 3 a.m. What? I haven't been working late all those nights. My stomach clenched. Where have you been? At Monique's mostly. Sometimes just driving around. I was punishing you for not reacting the way I wanted you to, by making me think you might be having an affair. Yes. I felt a flash of anger but pushed it down. We were being honest now. That was cruel, I said. Yes, it was. Why are you telling me now? Because I don't want to start over with lies between us. I nodded, appreciating the gesture even as it hurt. Anything else I should know? No affairs, no other lies, just the general awfulness of how I've been treating you. Okay? Are you angry? Yes, but I'm also grateful that you told me. What now? Now we see if we can build something better. 6 months later, Julie and I were having our first real fight as equals. It was about money, specifically about whether we should refinance the house to take advantage of lower interest rates. Julia thought we should wait. I thought we should act quickly before rates went back up. The old Julia would have dismissed my opinion and made the decision unilaterally. The old Nathan would have backed down to avoid conflict. Instead, we argued, really argued, with passion and conviction and respect for each other's intelligence. We researched together, consulted with experts, weighed the pros and cons. In the end, we compromised on a solution neither of us had initially considered. A different type of loan that met both our concerns. This is exhausting, Julia said after we'd signed the papers. What is? Actually having to consider your opinion about things. I laughed. Welcome to marriage. Is this what it's supposed to be like? I think so. It's messier than the old way. Yeah, but it's honest. She nodded, considering this. I like it, she said finally. I like us better this way. Even though you don't get to be in control, especially because I don't get to be in control, it's terrifying and liberating at the same time. The poker game had become a monthly tradition. Julia's book club met twice a month now, and she'd gradually distanced herself from Monique, Beth, and Addie. She'd found new friends who talked about books and ideas instead of husband management strategies. We went to counseling together for a while, learning better ways to communicate and resolve conflicts. Julia went to individual therapy too, working through the patterns she'd learned from her mother. It wasn't perfect. We still had bad days, moments when old habits tried to resurface. But we had something we'd never had before, a shared commitment to treating each other as equals. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Julia stopped what she was doing and looked at me. Nathan? Yeah? I love you. I love you too. No, I mean, I love you, the person you are now, the person you've always been underneath all my attempts to change you. Julia, I'm serious. I spent so many years trying to make you smaller, trying to make you fit into this box I'd created, and I almost lost the best thing in my life because of it. I set down the dish I was drying and pulled her into my arms. You didn't lose me, I said. I came close. But you didn't. What if I had? What if you'd just given up and left? then I would have missed out on this, on us, the way we are now. Do you think we would have figured it out eventually? Even if you hadn't overheard that conversation? I thought about it. I don't know, maybe. Or maybe we would have just kept going through the motions until one of us couldn't stand it anymore. I'm glad you heard it. Are you? Yes, because it forced us to deal with the truth instead of just living with the lie. That night, as we lay in bed, I thought about the conversation that had started it all. Julia laughing with her friends about how easy it was to control me, how she could manipulate my behavior with simple tactics. She'd been right, of course. It had been easy to control me because I'd been so desperate to avoid conflict that I'd given up pieces of myself, one by one. But she'd also been wrong about something important. She'd thought that her control was real power, that her ability to manipulate me made her stronger. In reality, it had made us both weaker. Her, because she'd never learned to get what she needed through honest communication. Me, because I'd never learned to stand up for what I wanted. The real power, it turned out, was in choosing to be vulnerable with each other, in choosing to trust instead of control, in choosing to build something together instead of trying to win against each other. It had taken us 19 years to figure that out. But we'd figured it out. And that, I thought as I drifted off to sleep next to my wife, my real wife, not the woman who'd been trying to manage me for all those years, was worth everything we'd been through to get there.